guests, please welcome Paul.avi with his speech entitled Consumerism, Buying the Torch of Freedom. Consumerism, Buying the Torch of Freedom. Paul.avi.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters, guests, tonight I'm going to talk to you about the concept of consumerism. I'm going to talk about what that term means, and I'm going to look retrospectively at some of the history of consumerism, and then look at some of the effects of consumerism on the planet and on us as individuals. So what does that term mean? In the context that I'm using it, the Oxford Dictionary defines consumerism as a society's preoccupation with the acquisition of goods. Now, where did it come from? Where did it start? Well, we can go back to early in the 20th century, to the First World War and the immediate post-war years. Because in the First World War, the Americans worked very hard to convey the message that they were not going to reinstall the old empires into Europe if the West was successful, that they were going to introduce democracy to Europe. Does that ring a bell? Where some democracy was missing. And they established a media unit to convey this message through Europe. And one of those people on the media unit was named Edward Bernays, Bernays. Edward Bernays happened to be a nephew of the psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud, and he was fascinated with some of Freud's theories. And what he found, he went back to Paris, or went to Paris with the US President Woodrow Wilson for the peace conference after the war, and he was amazed at the reaction of the French people to Woodrow Wilson. They were fanatical about Wilson. The propaganda, the friendly propaganda that the media unit had used during the war to convey the message of democracy had struck a chord with the French people. And he thought about this when he came back, and he said, we struck at the emotions of those people. We were introducing freedom and liberty to Europe. We weren't bringing back the old regimes. And he thought, if that could work in war, what could it do in peacetime? And he saw an opportunity. And he didn't he thought the term propaganda had negative connotations, which it did. So he invented a new term, which was public relations. And he conveyed this to some of the major corporations in the US. Now, what was one of his first projects? He was commissioned by one of the major tobacco companies to try to overcome the taboo of women smoking in public, because the tobacco company realised they were missing out on half their potential market. So they asked Edward Bernays to deal with this problem and to think about it and to tackle it. So he came up with an idea. He lived in New York. Every year in New York at Easter time there's a parade. It's now Macy's Parade. And at that time, the suffragette movement was seeking the vote for women. He hired some young debutantes to march in the Easter Parade. And he had spoken to some of the press corps. He had photographers and reporters ready. At a certain point in the parade, the debutantes stopped and they pulled up their dress. I won't do it and show my hair and leg. To above their knee, and they had a garter. They all had a garter. And within that garter was a cigarette. They pulled out a cigarette and lit up. Now, they weren't lighting cancer sticks. Nothing detrimental about these. This was the torch of freedom. It gained press all around the world. It struck a chord. He had the emotional hook. From that day on, it became acceptable, or built up. The acceptance built up very quickly for women to smoke in public. That idea took off like wildfire. Public relations and advertising became big time in the US. And in 1928, President Hoover said to a group of advertising executives, "You have taken over the job of creating desire. and you have transformed people into happiness machines. Machines that are the key to economic progress. After World War II, the chief economic advisor to President Eisenhower said that the ultimate purpose of the American economy is to produce more consumer goods. Consumerism had taken off. So we were in this new environment where the needs-based purchasing was old hat. It was now desire-based purchasing. The culture was changing from one of assessing products based on need to creating a desire even before the good had reached the end of its useful life. What has been some of the effect of this type of culture? The need to buy more and more. Well, at a personal level, people tend to feel more and more pressure. They're trying to keep up with the Joneses. They're working hard, long hours, in jobs they might not like, to help pay off that debt they've accumulated, to buy that new car, to get the new fashions. And what's it done to the planet? Well, we have a linear process which involves extraction, production, distribution, consumption, disposal, and all along the way we're trashing the planet. In terms of extraction, in the Amazon, every minute we're destroying 2,000 trees. Now you might have heard that figure previously. If you have, think about how long ago it was that you heard it. How many minutes and days, weeks and years have gone? That's just one example. There are over 100,000 synthetic chemicals in the world that go into the production process. Where do the goods go after we've used them? And how much of the goods are there, or what do they represent of all the inputs that went into them? Less than 10% of what comes out at the end is what's gone into it. So we're having a major impact on the planet, and an unsustainable impact because of the fact that we've been hooked emotionally to think we need more than we really do. So in summary, consumerism goes back to the early 20th century and the need to hook emotions and deal with our desire to battle emotions and fears and all the rest that advertisers and PR people can grab onto. It's having major effects on us personally and on our planet. And in conclusion, are we happier? Well, most surveys of happiness tell us that we're much less happy in this day of abundance than we were in the early 20th century before consumerism took off. So, unfortunately, I don't think we've all become happiness machines the way President Hoover believed we had.